Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to review the important information in this presentation. This presentation will provide a general overview on why we test, the universal screening process, and procedures and expectations for proctoring. For specific information on how to set up your platform for testing, please visit the documents in the training website. Now let's get started. First of all, thank you for acting as the administrator at your school or various schools for this GT Universal Screening. This testing is a very important process and helps us ensure students' services for all who require them. This is a crucial step for our kids, so thank you for your time and patience in this facilitation. Today we're going to look at the bulleted areas. The ultimate goal for this presentation is to allow you the opportunity to know the whys, the whats, and hows of this process and be able to articulate it to the administration, teachers, technical support people, and families at your school. The Naglieri Nonverbal Abilities Test is an assessment that measures general ability for students based on puzzles and patterns made by images. Although we have many cognitive measures available, we use the NNAT for some key reasons. First and foremost, research has demonstrated that the NNAT is a useful measure for diverse populations. Specifically, the NNAT has had great success in helping to identify students from ELL, young populations who have not yet mastered literacy, as well as students with twice exceptionalities. We have seen growth in our district numbers in diverse populations since we initiated universal screening with the NNAT. Second, this test itself can be administered to an entire class of students in less than an hour, which is great for scheduling purposes. The test itself will time out at 30 minutes unless a student is set to receive additional time. Universal Gifted and Talented Screening is required as part of House Bill 14-1102. The state requires conducting a universal screening of enrolled students no later than second grade to identify gifted children, and a second screening of gifted children in conjunction with the creation of each child's individual career and academic plan. In keeping with the law and best practices, DPS Gifted and Talented Department administers universal screenings in kindergarten, second grade, and sixth grade. The ultimate goal of the universal screening is to begin building a body of evidence for students so that they can eventually be identified for GT services. We recognize that the data collection process can take time, so while the process for full identification takes time, we designate students as magnet eligible if their cognitive score is in the 97th percentile or higher on the age percentile rank. Magnet eligible students may attend one of our magnet sites and receive GT services while in process. Please understand that students do not have to leave their current or home school if they're determined to be magnet eligible. Magnet sites are simply an option but are not forced on families. As you get into the early part of the semester, work with your kindergarten, second grade, or sixth grade teachers to determine the best dates and times to test your students. Please consider any field trips, planned fire drills, or any possible interruptions that may impact the testing. The testing window appears in the matrix at the top of the page. Please note the dates. You'll need to plan for about an hour for each testing session to ensure that the proctors have enough time to help students log into the home screen, complete the sample questions, and fully understand the testing instructions. Remember, the test itself takes 30 minutes or less to complete. Students needing time and a half or double time may still take the test in the same classroom as the regularly scheduled students, but please be prepared for some significant time intervals between students. Be prepared with a quiet activity for the students who finish early so that they do not disrupt the other students still actively testing. We do ask that you try to avoid regular testing on the final week of the testing window. Please leave that week open for makeup tests only. Your school's tech person is your best friend. Be sure to touch base with them in the very near future. TestNav is the app that students use for CMAS testing, so it should be loaded on some of your computer school devices. Pearson did conduct some platform updates over the summer, so please share the STR info documents that are available on this training site with your tech representative to ensure that the platform is ready and available on the devices. It's also a good idea to work with your tech person to make sure that you have the tech on the day that you plan to do the test. It's also a good idea to have them on call on the test day in case of any glitches or Wi-Fi errors. TestNav will run on iPads, Chromebooks, and computers. Please note that 4th generation's Fourth generation's iPads or older will not support the ENNAT testing. iPad minis cannot be used because of the screen resolution issue. All of the setup processes and specifications are available on the training site in the STR Systems Info section. Our biggest advice is to be prepared. Consider any scheduling conflicts that may impede testing. Be sure to schedule a backup date in case there's a technical problem or a conflict. Please also work with your special ed representative at the school to go over the roster and see if there are any students currently on 504s or IEPs that require testing accommodations. Students who require time and a half or double time need to be reported to Stacy at least 1 week prior to testing so they can be coded in the system. Once coded, the students will receive the extended time automatically when they log in to take the test. You will be responsible to schedule and work with any students with accommodations such as one-on-one or quiet space. Please remember that if a student does not have a 504 or IEP, we cannot grant them accommodations. Factor any limitations on technology into your schedule. Having fewer devices may mean that you need to break up classes into smaller testing sessions. Although the ENNAT is a nonverbal test, we can make a translation of the instructions available if needed. Please report translation requests to Stacy at least 1 week before testing, 2 weeks if it's a language outside of the court-mandated languages. Unlike other cognitive tests, the ENNAT is not a test that can be broken up into several testing sessions. Consider it a one-and-done test. Pausing can be done if necessary, but it's optional to go through the test in the 30-minute time frame. Please use the classroom teachers and paraprofessionals to your advantage. The ENNAT is a fairly simple administration. In fact, it is the students who control the start, pacing, and finish of the test. The only thing that the proctor must do is go through the few sample questions, check for student understanding, ensure a quiet space during testing, and answer questions when necessary. This is a quick administration as far as standardized testing goes. Feel free to go over the proctoring instructions with the classroom teachers and paraprofessionals, as children may feel more comfortable with a familiar adult in the room. This is very important. At least a few days prior to your testing, be sure to get an up-to-date roster from your school secretary. We understand that students are constantly coming and going within the district, so we may need to add students to the roster before testing. This year we're going to stagger the student imports by grade level and testing window to ensure the most recent rosters. Realistically, we know there are going to still be students coming in at the last minute. Unfortunately, the ENNAT platform does not allow teachers to add students to their roster. Please send a list of missing names to Stacy at least 2 weeks before testing. This will help alleviate last-minute stress. Please note, if you have students who left the school, they will remain on your roster even if they move to another school in the district. Please just ignore them, as we cannot delete them from the system. It is important that we're transparent with our DPS students and parents and their families. Please send home the intent letter, the intent test letter, and the ENNAT 3 one-pager. You may send those via email, in student folders, or via mail. These documents are available on the training site. Please let the families know an approximate date when you plan to conduct the testing so that they may be aware. Some parents like to talk to their children through the testing process or want to make sure they have a good night's sleep the day before. Please allow them that opportunity. We ask that this information is shared with families at least 3 to 5 days before the testing. Some families may choose to opt out of the testing, and that is their right. In the case of an opt-out, please encourage the parent to submit an email or letter so we have a paper trail noting their decision to opt out. Please include the student name, identification number, and school so that we may verify the student in the system. Please let Stacy know the opt-out as well so she has it in her records. Please do not assume opt-outs for students on your roster. In the past, we have had a few cases where teachers have considered the idea of not testing students in their AN classrooms. Unless a parent explicitly opts their child out of the testing, all children will be tested as part of the universal screening. Please do not make assumptions about a child's ability. You may be surprised by the results. There are a number of documents and support items that will help you set up your testing systems. Please review these on the training site. All student usernames will be their current student ID number, and the password will be assigned by the system when the session is generated. We definitely recommend creating one large testing session for students in the same grade level. It will provide you with only one password that can be used for all students. Plus, it's much easier for Stacy to troubleshoot a tech problem if there is one session instead of multiple per grade level. You can decide which method would be easiest for your students to gain their username and password. Generally, 6th graders already know their ID and can manage with the password being written on the whiteboard. 2nd graders do well with cards like this one. With the kinders, we recommend doing the testing in small groups and then have an adult enter their usernames and passwords immediately before the students start testing. Please note that the system will time out students at a certain point, so please be aware of that as well. Next, we'll be discussing considerations for the day of testing. Just consider some of these steps on the day of testing. Make sure that your test administrators have everything they need, including verbal proctoring instructions, which is on the training site. Make sure that you have the correct password on display. When testing begins, all the students will need to do is click on TestNav and log in with the information provided. One thing to consider, since TestNav is the same platform as CMAS, the app will likely still be set for the CMAS. When the students get to the login page, if Colorado appears as the header on the screen, then it is set for CMAS testing. To fix that, have them click on the top right-hand corner drop-down and select Different Customer. Have them choose NNAT 3. Then the students will be able to log in and self-lock. Test irregularities are the things that we are going to try our best to avoid. These are the actions or events that may impact the validity of the test. It may include a fire alarm going off mid-test to something as serious as cheating. If an irregularity happens, you must contact Stacy as soon as possible. We will need to work with ARE to record the incident. Take a few moments to review some of the common testing irregularities that have occurred. Notice that many of these are completely avoidable. Occasionally, the adults in the room are the ones who can intentionally or unintentionally invalidate tests. Any adult who is not authorized to be in the room for testing must be removed before any testing is done. Parents absolutely may not be in the room during testing. Approved school staff such as test administrators, classroom teachers, and paraprofessionals may be present. Please just ensure that they are aware of the testing and behavior expectations as noted in this presentation. Volunteers may not be present during the testing. This is a high-stakes test just like the CMAS. Please consider behaviors that might prove distracting to students, including side conversations. Even though the room will be quiet and activity will be minimized during the testing session, this is not an opportune time for proctors to conduct their own personal business. Proctors need to be present and monitoring students at all times during the testing sessions. There are a number of errors that can be prevented in the preparation stages prior to testing. Check your testing schedules, work with your tech people to make sure that the systems are up to date and running, and so on. Please be sure to monitor the students. This sample question time is critical. If a student seems confused, spend some time asking clarifying questions. Encourage students to check their answers when they get to the final stop sign, especially those who seem to have blown right through the test. We cannot emphasize this enough. If there are questions, do not be afraid to ask. That's the only way we can ensure that the testing is completely accurate. The NNAT system has improved over time, but it still has some issues every now and then. If you're having problems with the app on the device, work with your school's designated tech person. If you're having problems with the program, contact the GT office at the numbers listed below. Now that you've completed the compliance piece of the NNAT testing, you are welcome to start getting familiarized with the platform. Please review the step-by-step guides and files available on the training site. Be sure to connect with your school tech person and any administrators and test administrators to ensure they understand the procedures and needs. Again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. Here's Stacy's contact info. She will likely be your first person of contact for questions or issues. As much as she tries to be at her desk during the testing session, she may be called to help proctor a test in the field. Email is definitely the best method to get a hold of her.